of the House. I now call on Senator Mary Seery-Kearney.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and you're very welcome, Minister. I want to begin by honouring you as a very good and diligent colleague, a very hard worker for our party, but also you've been personally extremely good to me when you were as Chair of the Transport Committee, and I want to commend that. So I'm about to have a hissy fit and it's not personal. So first of all, you are a Minister of State in the Department of Housing. This is a matter about families, and it is under the Department of Health. It is outrageous that the Department of Health saw fit to send in someone from a different department to address what is a very serious issue for families, and it is also, Cathaoirleach, absolute showing contempt to the Seanad that the Department of Health would think that that's an all right response. So I completely object to that. Last December, Minister Donnelly came out in a great flurry and was very well received by the surrogacy community in Ireland for the announcement of the memo to Cabinet about the fact that the government is now going to legislate for international surrogacy. That has two elements. It has a prospective element of the babies to be born, but it also has a retrospective elements of the babies born and the families living in Ireland, where the second parent in all of those families has absolutely no standing in law. None with regard to their child. If the child is more than 2 years old and they have cohabited with that child, they get an opportunity to apply to the district court for guardianship of that child, and they do so only on the consent of the biological father of that child. If that relationship has broken down, that ends up in a very abusive, coercive situation, and there are at least, between myself and Irish Families Through Surrogacy, we are supporting at least 10 families, and predominantly women and 2 men who are the second parents in these situations and who are having their access to their own child limited, where the child is weaponised in situations of family breakdown. There are also situations where the biological father has a terminal illness or a very serious illness, and in the event of the death of that father, that child will be left with no parent in the state. So I can predict your speech. I can predict it's going to be, this is complicated, there's a lot of amendments to come through, we're the first state, which is a lie, by the way, we're the first state to legislate for this, because I've heard these speeches from the Department of Health a million times at this stage. It is not good enough. Today there are families suffering detriment for the fact that the government is slow and not urgent about bringing forward this legislation. In this week alone, I made a very simple data subject access request in respect of my daughter in a very small matter, and did that. I sent in her birth certificate, sent in all of that I am her mother, I'm entitled to make that claim. They came back contesting that. Because of the birth certificate as a foreign birth certificate. And I had to produce the court orders to prove that I am the mother of my child. That is not good enough. I should have had an Irish document that shows my parental order, that my child has an official state document that has us as her parents, my husband and I. If my husband and I, if our relationship broke down, and thankfully we have a very strong marriage, and I had to say that in the email to say, actually, this is a district court order for guardianship and custody, but our relationship is very sound. So you end up over-explaining your personal life because the government has dragged its heels and it is making an absolute meal out of this when there should have been a level of urgency. The report from the Surrogacy Committee was last July. We're now into February. I need a timeline for when these amendments are going to get into the committee so that applications can be made to the court.
Thank you, Senator. And Tara, Minister.
Thanks very much. And I want to acknowledge really how serious an issue this is for families. And obviously, Senator Seery-Kearney, you've pioneered on this and you've campaigned on this and you've done a huge amount of political work on it. And it's a matter I know that needs to be expedited. So with that, I would like to begin by thanking the Senator Mary Seery-Kearney for giving me on behalf of Minister Donnelly the opportunity to inform the House of the up-to-date position in respect of introducing legislative provisions for the regulation of international surrogacy and historic surrogacy arrangements. As Senator Siri County is aware, Minister Donnelly, together with the Minister for Justice and the Minister for Children, Equality, Disability, Integration and Youth, submitted proposals for the consideration of Cabinet in respect of both the regulation of international surrogacy and recognition of certain past surrogacy arrangements, both domestic and international, this policy direction and draft outline legislative scheme were approved by Government in mid-December last 2022, and Minister Donnelly wrote to the AG before Christmas to request prioritisation of the formal draft of these legislative amendments. The drafting process by the Office of the Parliamentary Council in conjunction with these three departments as spoke is well underway, and I have followed up on it myself. It is being prioritised. I have spoken to officials directly myself, and I know there are people working exclusively on this in the Office of the Parliamentary Council in the AG's office, because I know how important it is for both you and the parents, of which you are one. The intention is to insert the finalised new legislative provisions in respect to international surrogacy and past surrogacy arrangements into the Health Assisted Human Reproduction Bill at committee stage, along with any other proposed amendment to the published bill. These new provisions will need to be approved by the Government following the completion of formal drafting by the Office of the Parliamentary Council. That was obviously what was agreed in December. Therefore, the process of drafting new provisions in respect of prospective international surrogacy, the recognition of past domestic surrogacy arrangement and the recognition of past international surrogacy arrangement, those three areas, is being undertaken in tandem with the drafting of potentially substantial proposed amendments to the 11 parts and 134 pages of the already published bill. On behalf of the three Ministers of the Government, I reiterate their gratitude for the work undertaken by the Special Oireachtas Joint Committee International Surrogacy, of which the Senator was an esteemed member, and you made reference to the report, which has very much is forming these amendments. And the stated position of the three Ministers and the Government is to seek, insofar as appropriate and possible, to implement the recommendations of the committee. However, Senator Siri County will appreciate it. This is crucial, and the final detailed provisions are robust and able to withstand. That is crucial that they are able to withstand rigorous scrutiny given the range of complexities involved. I understand your frustration, but I think everyone here wants to get this right. The rights of all the various parties involved in the surrogacy arrangements and the necessity to ensure consistency with any related existing legislation and the statute books. In this regard, should also be noted that the three departments are not aware of any other state which has attempted to provide such a bespoke and comprehensive legislative solution to the issues arising from its own engaging in international surrogacy. You've already made reference to that, so I'll let that to yourself. Minister Donnelly is aware that and completely understands the reasons why Senator Siri County is eager to know why these amendments will be, when these amendments will be ready for publication. But at this juncture, a definitive timeline as to when the committee stage of the bill will be scheduled cannot be provided. I've spoken to the Minister and the officials. I've asked it to be utterly prioritised. Nevertheless, in this budget, I'd ask just for forbearance, because it's such an important issue. Nevertheless, in this budget, the three Ministers will be in a position to bring the proposed three new surrogacy parts of the bill to Cabinet in the next couple of months. Finally, Minister Donnelly wants to reassure Senators, and obviously in particular Senator Siri County, that he wishes to progress this much-needed and long-awaited piece of historic legislation as quickly as possible. Sure both that the goal of providing for a route to formal recognition by the state of past surrogacy arrangements or surrogacy arrangements in other jurisdictions is achieved, and that a robust regulatory framework for assisted human reproduction more broadly is put in place.
Thank you, Minister.
Thanks.
Thank you, Minister.
And Minister, as I know as a colleague, if you stand here and you say that you have made the phone calls and you give the reassurance, I know that you have, and I'm very, very grateful for that. I suppose there are other concerns here. The other concerns are things like the position paper that was passed by Cabinet talks about application to the High Court for retrospective surrogacies, and that the regulatory authority would have to be established. If we're looking at that, my daughter, who is now nearly 8, is going to be 10 or 12 at this rate, at the rate that this operates at. So even if we have the legislation in by the summer, we're still looking at another year before there be applications to court. And people like me, where our documentation has already had judicial oversight on not one but 2 occasions, still have to apply and go to the expense of applying to the High Court. So there are things in this that are not person-centred, they're not child-centred, there isn't a sense of urgency. So I would really ask you to bring that back. It is my understanding the AG is sticking strictly by a High Court. I will be objecting to that all the way through as being a totally unnecessary and cumbersome, unless they're going to financially support it. We've already paid out tens of thousands to get in and get the legal orders that we already have. It is unacceptable that there are any more delays like that.
Thank you very much indeed. And Tara?
I would like to conclude by emphasising the urgency with which Minister Donnelly wishes to be in a position to bring the new surrogacy provisions to the Select Committee on Health for consideration at committee stage of the Health Assisted Human Reproduction Bill. In particular, he is determined to seek a way to speedily resolve the predicament and uncertainty faced by parents of existing children born through surrogacy, and although it would not be appropriate to comment on individual cases, he is fully aware of the difficult situations facing some family in ongoing court proceedings. Other key principles underpinning any new legislation measures on international surrogacy will be the protection of the rights of all children born as a result of cross-border surrogacy arrangements and the safeguarding of the welfare of surrogacy mothers. The points you've raised today, I will bring back to the Minister. I will ask him to correspond directly with you, but I will certainly, you've highlighted them here today, and it's a matter I will bring back to Minister Donnelly myself, ask him to communicate with you directly on those points. When formulating legislation, adhering to these principles is very challenging given the absence of an international framework and the challenges associated with overseeing practice and service in other jurisdictions, including having assurances that surrogacy arrangements are of the highest ethical standards and prioritising those which may be most vulnerable to exploitation in international surrogacy. However, and building on the work of the Oireachtas Committee Interdepartmental Group, of which Senator Sarah County, you're a member of, Minister Donnelly hopes to shortly be able to put forward a finalised new legislation to Cabinet, and ideally, when then approved, to brief the Oireachtas accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Senator Carney. Ms. Siri Carney.